Hello and welcome everyone to a new developer update or dev stream, however you want to call it, with me, Ryan, your community manager, and Jean.
Hello.
Very happy to have you here once again. Always great to have you around, especially when we talk about balance changes.
Yeah.
And this being update 10.1 that we're talking about, it's dropping tomorrow on Thursday. And it's going to be the first update of 2022, so let's see if we can kick things off with a bang. Obviously, just as a preface, we know that over the holidays, obviously everything's a bit slower and everyone needs a break, but we prepared this patch a little bit earlier as well. But I think there's enough spicy changes in there to get things going nicely this year. So I think without further ado, unless you've got something to say before we start.
Oh, let's jump right into it.
All right, let's jump right into it because I'm excited. And also, if you're not only here for the balance changes, there is more to come at the end. So stick around for that. And yeah, without further ado, let's start with a change to initiative.
Yes, initiative. An old mechanic that was introduced some time ago, and at the time the intention behind initiative was that we didn't want the players to be able to set their entire board and in the same turn play a card that would completely erase everything, right? This Scourge, and so the old version of initiative, you would have it would only trigger if it was the first action of your turn, and it had this side effect that if you were to use a card to tutor your initiative card, well, the initiative condition will be fulfilled because you already had played another card.
Yeah.
So we've changed initiative to only care about if you've already used an order. And that basically allows us to still prevent all of the same turn setup that we had in the past. One thing to note is that leader ability are in fact order abilities.
Okay.
Right? But you're going to be able this time to tutor these kind of cards. And so we hope that it's going to give some nice alternative to players, and that we'll see some experimentation around these cards.
Nice. So basically, in a nutshell, we can still tutor these cards, or we can now actually tutor these cards, but we still can't use orders to set up the opponent's boards for a big Scourge, for example.
On the same turn, yes, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Gives it a bit more of a twist, and I think, a bit more freedom. Moving on to our next change. This is a big one. At least in the eyes of the community, I think this is a card that really deserved some form of adjustment. So why don't you tell us what you did?
Yeah, I mean, in our eyes too, because let's be honest, Melva is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And well, I mean, as the opponent, you have some ability to make the life of your of the Milva player harder. But still, and so the change that we've introduced is that the damage of the Ardor has been reduced from 2 to 1. And, well, the immediate effect of this is, of course, less points, but most importantly, it's going to make it way harder to actually have her properly go back to the deck, which in general should also limit her damage output.
Yeah, and I think the leader ability that he was using or comboed with mostly was Guerrilla Tactics, I assume, and that gave this combo a reach of 5 points, right? Which a lot of cards, engines that are set up find themselves at. So I think reducing this point reach to 4 points is, as you said, quite a big nerf, even though maybe a change from 2 to 1 doesn't seem as big. Combo that with the death blow being harder to set up. I think we're gonna see a lot more Milva stuck on the board than before.
Yeah, and in general, we want Milva to be a bit more of a specialist, right? Because at the moment, it's very much played, well, generalistically in pretty much all of the skeletal deck that we see, and it's not the state that we're looking for.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see what that brings to the table tomorrow. But now let's move on to another change that is concerning Squirtle as well.
Yeah. So in general, in this patch, we wanted to take a look at the hand buff archetype of Squirtle, and this comes first by touching Invigorate. And so the change is that you are now able to have 3 charges instead of 2, but number of units that you're able to boost has gone down from 5 to 4. So before you would be able to spread 10 points of boost, right? Now you have 12 because it's 4 times 3. But the provision was increased. Decreased. So you have 15 provisions instead of 16. So technically you're only gaining 1 point out of this. But in the case of hand buff, the most important thing is that you're going to be able to have the same target get 3 boosts instead of 2 now, and this is very major. Like your very high priority targets such as Aglaïs, such as
Sheldon, Torque.
Bork, thank you. These are the ones that are going to matter the most, and so this is going to be way more than 1 point in the case of hand buff.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for this change. I guess in a sense it is an adjustment, but I think we were quite convinced that this is a buff in the end to the archetype. And I think there's a few more cards that you touched up upon regarding the hand buff archetype, right? Yeah.
I think one of the important one is that we've kind of decided to rework Dwarven Agitator and Rayhead Saboteur. So these were cards that had like a very simple hand buff effect, but it was archetype locked. So respectively Dwarf and Elves. And this wasn't a direction that we wanted to pursue anymore with hand buff. So instead, what we've done is that we've made like a single effect that works with hand buff, which we put on Auquier support. So you're going to be able to boost an allied unit in your hand, and if it was already boosted, you get 3 points of boost instead of 1. Which is really pretty good for your setups.
Yeah.
And Dwarven Agitator, we reworked it in more of a like dwarf card. So like on deploy, you are going to be able to give armor to dwarves in your hand, and whenever you play a dwarf, it's going to gain armor. And in the case of Rayhead Saboteur, we basically put Auquier support old ability on it. Which works with artifacts, which makes sense because elves, be it through the trap archetype or be it through scenario, already have existing artifact synergies, right?
I see.
And the last one is in the case of Sirsa. We've slightly tweaked our effect to be closer to the way Circle of Life works, where you're always gonna get the boost on a random unit in your hand, but on Death Blow you actually get to pick where that boost is going.
Okay. I guess that allows the card to be a bit more consistent with its points.
Yeah, more consistent, also less risky to play, right? Because at least you're not actually going to be losing the value if you don't get that low.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for Squirtle then. The next faction that we want to talk about, I assume, is Skellige in a sense, but only in a sense.
Yes. So I guess I'm going to introduce a bit the topic first, which is that after the previous patch, we've considered Skellige to be in a very interesting state. Like we pushed a lot of different archetypes, pirate, warrior, even Self-Wound got a bit of help, and there was also the already existing one, right? Be it Rain SK or the Druid version.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't have direct change to bring to it for this patch. But
what does that mean? We
Well,
have. Oh.
yeah, we have changed to 2 neutral cards, Knickers and Roach. Knickers seeing his provision go down by 1, and Roach getting a power increase.
Wait.
The logic.
Does is this in the Scapegoat bracket because of a word that rhymes with sippy?
Yes, yes. So yeah, historically, these 2 cards they've been used in restricted sets of archetypes, and one of these is Lippy, of course. And Lippy hasn't really been seen in a while now, and we thought it was like a nice touch to bring a bit more of relevance to the archetype. Also, in general, we've been introducing more strong archetype-specific thinner cards, and in this new environment, cards like Knickers and Roach made a bit less sense in their previous stat spread.
Interesting. Well, Norgard, you're welcome, and Flake, we're sorry, but I'm gonna personally be excited to see Roach in a different deck that I've played in the past, and I think that's actually our next topic, right? We can talk a little bit about Nilfgaard and how they can make use of these.
Yeah, because we were talking about the archetype they've been used in SK, but historically the other archetype they've seen a lot of use in is NG Hyperfen.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Hyperfen, not only are we boosting these 2 cards, we are also...
There's more?
Yes, there's more.
Ooh!
Yes. We're also bringing a slight buff to Ryan, to Reens.
To me?
Yes. He's getting a power increase from 5 to 6, and this matters a bunch because that makes the card more likely to stick on the board, meaning you're more likely to be able to land the order.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that order can have a big impact.
A
point
huge
swing.
one, because if you're Hyperfen, well, it's very likely there's going to be 1 card or less in your deck, meaning you basically get to kill something on the board.
Yep. All right. Now, after Hyperfen, another topic in Nilfgaard is Assimilate, right? We've got some plans for that.
Yeah, 2 changes that touch Assimilate kind of indirectly. So a buff to Tourney Shalmar that goes from 8 provision to 6, and a buff to Vilgefortz. I believe he was 6 power before, and he's now on 8. Okay. So in the case of Vilgefortz, we've seen some use of the card, but more like a meme game plan, notably alongside Imperial Practitioner, and that was really cool to see. But we're also hoping that with this buff, the card might find its place as like an alternative way to pay off in the Assimilate deck, by being able to like get a card that's gonna trigger Assimilate.
Yeah.
In the case of Tourney Shalmar, the card is interesting because it kind of provide another way that Assimilate can pay off from what it loves doing, just putting a lot of cards on the board from your opponent's faction. Before it used to be way too risky to play at 8 provision, but we think at 6 that it's something that you might just be able to consider as an incentive, and in general try to diversify the way the Assimilate tools can be used and Scapegoat can be played.
I mean, I can already feel different Nilfgaard decks being a bit more scared of the Assimilate decks, because if they run into a Tourney Shalmar and just take 7 damage by that on your Nilfgaard units, that always hurts. So yeah, the value on that card can be incredibly high. Very excited for that. Okay, and I think that rounds up Nilfgaard for now. Moving on to another very scary faction, and that is monsters. And as you can see here, we've got a sleepover. We've got 2 old spear tips. We've got obviously old spear tip Asleep, which has been adjusted and actually completely changed. So why don't you give us a rundown on what his new ability is?
So we're not bringing a lot of changes to monster, but we're bringing Matterful one. So in the case of Asleep, he used to be this kind of simple card, right? With Veil, and honestly, the card didn't really have a niche in the game. And so instead, we've been completely working it, kind of taking inspiration, in fact, from the bed ability, right? Where it was a single card which would wake up and transform from its asleep version to its very much awake one. And so with this new ability, basically Asleep is going to be able to summon its awake version from the deck, removing itself from the board, and buffing it at the same time if you manage to land it properly. And yeah, it's basically a flavorful effect, but we think that in general it can synergize with Point Time game plan, and especially synergize with card like Ozreal, because it's in fact a base power increase instead of being a boost.
So is that going to be 18 points on the old spear tip?
Very much so, yes. If you're able to blend the proper effects.
Well, I'm ready for an 18-point spear tip. That
one
sounds like a
important
buffet.
detail is that so in its effect, Asleep mentioned that it needs to take damage. Like if it takes damage before the countdown is done, it does the summoning, right? But it doesn't boost the base power because he was woken up too soon.
I see.
But takes damage here means that the power needs to change.
Yeah.
So if you only deal 1 or 2 damage to it, that only removes the armor, so the summoning still doesn't happen. And this is in fact the reason why we've been adding armor to the card. That protects it a bit from just being pinged once and doing the summoning.
That makes sense. I mean, you can see it wearing some leg armor there on the card art.
And it's bulky, right? Like you must shake it up a bit if you really want to wake him up.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the optimal way for your opponent is to eliminate it in one turn, if possible, right? But if they end up damaging it, you're still not that mad if you're playing this card, right? Because you still get this old spear tip for free out of your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they have to deal 3 damage to it, technically you have to count 12 points plus 3, right?
Yeah.
Because that's 3 damage that didn't go on another unit, and at the end of the day you have your old spirit tip on the board, which is 12 points.
Damn, yeah. No, this sounds really good. This sounds really good. Okay. I think we need to move on from old spear to asleep, or else the chat falls asleep. But we've got Mountout waiting in the shadows, and it's actually gotten a buff.
Yes. So we've made it slightly cheaper, and we've also quite increased its armor. And now it's going to require to be dealt 5 damage if you actually want to remove it from the board before the order triggers. The idea in general is that we wanted to tweak the risk versus reward ratio of Montard to be more interesting, and that way we kind of hope that it's going to be tried in, for instance, relict decks as kind of an alternative game plan by using all of these copies of cards that you're going to put in your graveyard.
Yeah, you're going to accumulate a lot of bodies, and it's going to be exciting to see if Mountout is able to survive now a bit more, maybe. Especially if people don't expect it, right? Usually monsters don't really require a late answer in that kind of sense, in a relic deck at least. So, yeah, it's going to be a nice surprise. Also a nice surprise, I think, for the for the audience. I'm sorry. We have a huge change, or not a huge change, but a huge nerf to a king. Which king could it be? It is obviously the King of Beggars.
Yeah, I don't know about huge nerf, but definitely. Well, there was Milva in this patch, but there also was King of Beggar, which was pretty much used in every sticky deck, especially with the Savola combo, right? You'd play Savola, and that would immediately get your King of Beggar to pop out of the deck. So the first change that we've made to it is that we've increased the counter from 9 to 12. And that sounds like a buff, right? More counters means more coin. But what we hope by achieving by doing so is that now you're gonna have to commit more to actually get your King of Beggar to come out of the deck, right? It's not only Savola, you're gonna need to play other tributes. And we have tweaked that by increasing the provision. It went from like 10 to 12, and lowering the power, which went from 4 to 3. So 3 points were lost in power and provision, 3 points were gained in counters. And in general, what we hope is that the card is going to become more complex to include in your deck, not only because it's more expensive, but also because you need to include more tribute card. And at the same time, that keeps the card really interesting if you're going for a full tribute game plan.
Yeah, I think requiring more than just one card to trigger this, I think is already a big change, because you need double the amount of cards to set this up, for example. If you need a second one. And I guess the power lowering is a nice touch as well. Just easier to remove it as well if you want to keep it on the board as a spender. But I'm excited to see how this is going to play out, this change. I think in general people will appreciate a nerf to this.
Yes, so will we.
So do we have anything else in hand for Syndicate?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been looking at, in general, we've been looking back at the price of power cards and kind of seeing what really succeeded and what didn't succeed as much. And one of these things that didn't succeed as much is the bounty archetype. So it has been seeing some very successful use in more mid-range game plans. So for instance, in Pirate Cove and Jackpot.
Yeah.
But the only bounty, right? 100% bounty game plan, not so much so.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been introducing a bunch of change. So as you can see, a lot of provision and power and just stats in general. Interesting things to note is that we've added backup spender's ability to Savvy Uxer and to Octavia L, which should really help the archetype because it has been kind of struggling with actually spending its coin, which is also one of the reasons we've seen it played with Pirate Cove. We've done a complete rework to Scapegoat, which now is a disloyal card in Syndicate. And the idea is that you play it on your opponent's board, you profit, so you gain a lot of coins, and the card has a bounty, so it actually kind of gives you targets that you can aim for. And yeah, we've made Fabian Ale cheaper. The tribute of Ignatius Ale has been reduced, which means that in general you don't need to apply as many bounty if you want to be able to play it for free. Yeah,
I see the Hale family has some mole in the design team, I assume. It's getting a big family buff handout right there. But I think people will be happy about that because they have been, I think, trying to fit them into more decks, but been struggling to find the value in some parts. But yeah, especially the new what is it called, Scapegoat, I think will also be very funny to see. And I think if you combo that with the new special card that hits a bounty card or a card with bounty on it for one, just an instant combo, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for Syndicate, and that only leaves us with one more faction to go, and it is the Northern Realms. And here, what do we have in hand?
So, kind of like Scapegoat, we don't have much changes for Northern Realm, and the reasoning. So, we are aware that Northern Realm is a bit weaker this patch. The thing is, one of the things we are interested in is to see how it will react, and especially the old alumni deck, after decks like Milva have been nerfed. Because, well, this very contrary deck, they created a very oppressive environment for a faction like Northern Realm, which has all of these very greedy decks. So, we'll see how the deck evolves. Also, in general, the price of power cards in the case of Northern Realm has been quite successful, and that leads us to like one counterexample to this, which is Istred, which hasn't been seeing that much play, especially after the second round. And a very simple change, basically reduces provision down to 6, but this fits in general into a strategy that like we're exploring more and more. We started exploring it with Maxi, and in this patch we've made a few changes, such as Octavia Ale also lowering in terms of power and provision ratio. And basically that goal is that we want to create a niche for cheap consistency tool. So they're not going to be super reliable, in the way Maxi works. But you can cheaply introduce them to your deck, and in doing so, make your game plan more consistent. And another example of this is that in this patch, we've increased Fisher King power by 1. And so also a card that's going to be priced around 6 per version that you can use to try to gain consistency in alternative ways.
All right. I'm excited to find out if it's going to creep its way into a few decks that we see on the ladder. But for now, I think that's it for all the changes in this patch. We're obviously going to keep a close eye on how the meta develops and what changes will be necessary at the end of the month and coming with the next patch then. But there is one more thing that we wanted to show you, everyone, because while I've got Jean here, why don't we talk about draft as well? I think people were hungry to explore this game mode further, but there has been kind of a lack of incentive because there wasn't really anything to play for except for the stats and for the experience itself. But people like to have a goal, people like to get rewards for stuff, but you can't get rewards for free without any kind of payment up front. So obviously there is an entrance fee to the new draft mode, but it is officially going out of beta. So let's take a quick look at how this looks. And here we have your entry to the cycle, and as you can see, you've got multiple ways of paying that ticket, paying that fee, making that bloody pact with the devil before entering the cycle and entering the draft mode. But if you successfully build your deck and make it all the way to the end, you will not fail to get a lot of rewards out of it. And here you can see a example screen of getting 7 wins, a nice card, gold card, some scraps, some resources, and in general I think this will enhance the player experience quite a lot by actually having something to work and play for and having an actual alternative to maybe the standard game mode. And to celebrate the release of Draft, we will be bringing back the Dark Twisted World board and the Gorturdim Dark Skin. It's a very nice combo. If you haven't gotten it yet, now you have the chance to grab it and celebrate the Draft release together with us.
Excited.
Yeah. We take those.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm happy for players to finally jump in there and maybe feel like they've got more feedback. Obviously, please do give us feedback on the draft mode still, even though it's out of beta or like officially released now. We want more feedback on it because obviously with the meta evolving and with cards changing, there's always things that we need to change about the packages as well. If there's something that you spot, if you feel like maybe there's a new idea that you've got, you know where to reach us, right? Either on our forums, on playgwent.com, or on Discord, on Twitter, even on Reddit, on all the social medias that we're active on. Please make sure to ping us there. And yeah, I think I want to thank you, John, for joining me today. Everyone
Pleasure.
out there for watching, and I'll leave you to it to say a few words.
Wow, yeah, putting me on the spot. No, I have nothing much else to add. Yeah.
Well, then
See
I
you
look
guys
forward
next month.
exactly to seeing you in the future again. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you all for watching, and we'll send you now to play some Gwent. Bye.
See you, everyone.